Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture on Kriging. Kriging differs from other interpolation strategies used in GIS because it is a probabilistic technique. What this means is that along with estimating values for unknown areas, Kriging also takes into account the uncertainty associated with the estimated or predicted value. Kriging is based on the idea that points close in space should be spatially correlated. Their values should be more similar than points that are further away from each other. This is Tobler's first law of geography that you may already be familiar with. Kriging takes into account the spatial structure of the data values, and it does this by modeling what's called the variogram. The variogram plots the distance between pairs of points on the x-axis and their variance, or how much they differ from each other, on the y-axis, using the equation shown here, where z sub a and z sub b are simply the values at location A and B. N is the total number of sample pairs. The variogram uses every single pair of points. It plots their distance versus their variance on the graph, and then it fits a nonlinear model, so that's the line in the plot here, to these points. Using this model, using the line, it is possible to identify what's called the range. This is the separation distance, so that distance on the x-axis, in which the values of the samples are no longer considered to be similar to each other. So their variance has leveled off, and that's the point at which we no longer think that spatial autocorrelation is operating on those values. Two other components of the variogram are key for understanding the spatial structure of the data. The first is the CIL, which is the value at which the range occurs, or that variance value. You can see it as the dotted line, the horizontal dotted line that's trending towards about 0.8 on the semivariance. The second is the nugget, and we'll take a deeper look at the nugget in just a bit. So let's take a quick look at an example of the amount of silver in geologic samples. The similarity of the amount of silver in two separate samples is plotted on the x-axis, and the distance between the samples, so how far apart they were in the field, is plotted on the x-axis. You can see that the similarity starts to level off around 50 meters, which means that beyond 50 meters, we wouldn't expect samples to have similar silver values. The nugget is the term used for the phenomenon where at small separation distances, there can still be large distances in values. This term was coined based on gold nuggets. So you can think if you are drilling for gold, you can drill one sample in one location and have no traces of gold. But if you move just a small distance away, you might hit a nugget in which you would have a very large amount of gold in that sample. That means the variance is high even though the separation distance is low. And that's why the variogram model doesn't always trend to zero at very small separation distances. Sometimes it's a little bit up higher on that y-axis, as you can see here from the graph. After building the variogram, or it's sometimes referred to as the semi-variogram, Kriging uses that model to estimate weights for each location in the study region, and those weights are then used to estimate values. Going through the math for how to estimate those weights using the semi-variogram is beyond the scope of this course. However, the important point to remember is that unlike methods such as IDW that only take into account the distances between samples, Kriging takes into account both the distance and the variance, allowing for a measure of uncertainty at each unsampled point. So to end, let's just take a quick look at an example. On the left, you can see the original surface with the black dots representing the sample points. And on the right, you can see the kriged surface. So the values at the points were used to recreate the underlying surface. As you can see, Kriging did a pretty good job estimating the values, and that's why it's used often in GIS analysis. It's pretty accurate compared to the other techniques. So that's all for Kriging, and I will see you next time.